Your doctor says your thyroid is fine, and your labs say normal. So, why is it that you still feel like absolute garbage? I'm Jennifer Franchak, a functional nutritionist and AIP certified coach, and I'm about to show you the tests that your doctor never ran and why that changes everything. Here's what I keep seeing in my practice: women who are exhausted because they're burning the candle at both ends, and they're also inflamed and struggling with intense periods and hot flashes and autoimmune flare ups. And when they go to their doctor, they're frustrated because they're being told that it's just hormones or that they're just getting older. But no one's really taking the time to connect the dots. And in reality, what's really happening underneath the surface is a gut thyroid imbalance that's actually driving those symptoms. And once you uncover that and start to heal your gut, your hormones will finally start to balance out and your immune system can start to calm down. Now, like I said before, I keep seeing this recurring pattern in my practice. Women come to me usually between the ages of 35 and 50, and they feel frustrated and sometimes even a little bit hopeless because they have these hormonal symptoms that just don't make sense. They feel exhausted no matter how much sleep they're getting. Maybe their genes fit differently, even though their diet hasn't really changed. Maybe they're noticing more moodiness, and a lot of them are dealing with brain fog, which makes it so hard to focus and just get anything done. And what many of these women tell me is that they feel like they're doing everything right. They're trying to eat healthy, they're trying to exercise, and they're also managing family and work and all the things, and still their body feels really unpredictable. Now, the hard thing about these symptoms in particular is that these symptoms also present with perimenopause. So when these women that I've worked with have gone to their doctor and try to get some answers as to why they feel so off, usually what happens is their doctor will run some basic tests, including thyroid stimulating hormone or TSH. And when that one isolated thyroid lab comes back normal, which by the way, normal range does not mean optimal, the doctor rules out thyroid problems and might prescribe a sleeping pill or some anxiety medication without really taking the time to get to the root of the problem. So I'm curious, has this ever happened to you? You go in for answers only to be told that your thyroid is fine because your TSH is in range. Comment below and let me know if this story sounds like your experience. And if that does sound like you, I want you to know that you are not imagining it. There's usually a deeper reason that those symptoms keep showing up, even when your labs look normal. And I want to show you what this looks like through the experience of one of my clients. So Emily was in her mid-40s when we started working together, and she was really feeling defeated because she had been dealing with worsening hormonal symptoms, really debilitating fatigue, some weight gain, and autoimmune flare-ups that seemed to spike right before her period. When she went to her doctor and asked him if it could be thyroid related, he really kind of dismissed her concerns and told her that it was normal for women at her age to have more hormonal fluctuations. And because her TSH was within normal range, he just kind of ruled out anything thyroid related and didn't want to investigate it any further. And again, unfortunately, many doctors are just looking at TSH, which is honestly just one piece of the puzzle when it comes to your thyroid function. And they're not looking at any of the other thyroid labs, which give a fuller picture. So instead of listening to her concerns and digging a little deeper, he only wanted to focus on the fact that her cholesterol was elevated. And he wanted her to start a statin, which she was really hesitant to do because she had heard about all of the side effects that can come with statins. So when Emily shared this with me, I found it really interesting that no one seemed to be curious about why her cholesterol was high. No one had slowed down long enough to really look at her story, to connect her symptoms with her health history. Now, her mom and both of her sisters had Hashimoto's thyroiditis, which is an autoimmune condition where the immune system attacks the thyroid. But that family pattern had never really been explored. And on top of that, she had been living with years of exhausting, painful periods that only intensified as she got older. So instead of rushing to take a statin for her high cholesterol, Emily and I wanted to look deeper to find out what was actually driving the high cholesterol. And that meant asking a bigger question: what else in her body was out of balance? So we ran a more comprehensive set of thyroid labs, not just TSH, but also free T3, free T4, reverse T3, and thyroid antibodies, including TPO and thyroglobulin antibodies. And that's when the picture became much clearer. Her TSH was technically in what is considered normal range, but it was on the higher end. It was about 3.5, which often indicates that the thyroid is working harder than it should to keep up. And her free T3 was low, which meant that her body wasn't converting thyroid hormone efficiently, and her thyroid antibodies were elevated, which pointed to Hashimoto's thyroiditis. But we didn't stop there. We also ran a GI map test to assess her gut health, and what we found was really significant. The GI map showed that she had dysbiosis, which is an imbalance in her gut bacteria, and she also had elevated beta-glucuronidase, which is an enzyme that prevents the body from properly eliminating used up estrogen. This was contributing to something called estrogen dominance, which is when your estrogen and progesterone levels are out of balance. And this was leading to her heavier cycles and intensified symptoms. We also saw signs of intestinal permeability or leaky gut, which explained why her immune system was so reactive and why her inflammation markers were elevated. So now we had a much fuller picture. Her gut was inflamed and it wasn't supporting thyroid hormone conversion, and her immune system was attacking her thyroid. Now, again, her doctor did not want to run a full thyroid panel, even though Emily asked him to, and he only wanted to focus on the elevated cholesterol. And by the way, after we did those labs, Emily found a new doctor who was willing to listen to her and who formally diagnosed her with Hashimoto's thyroiditis. But getting back to the cholesterol, high cholesterol wasn't the main problem. It was a symptom of her underlying autoimmune disease. Now, I just want to take a moment to explain why this connection between the gut, thyroid, and cholesterol matters so much, because once you understand it, a lot of your symptoms will start to make more sense. So your thyroid controls your metabolism and how your body uses energy and regulates temperature and processes fats. So when your thyroid is sluggish or under autoimmune attack, your metabolism slows down. And one of the first things that happens is that your body stops clearing cholesterol efficiently. And that's why high cholesterol, especially LDL and triglycerides, can be an early sign or red flag of thyroid dysfunction, even when your TSH looks normal. But here's where the gut comes in. Your gut is responsible for about 20% of thyroid hormone conversion, specifically converting the inactive form T4 into the active form T3 that your cells can actually use. And also, when your gut is inflamed, it increases intestinal permeability, which again is leaky gut. And this allows undigested food particles and toxins and bacteria to cross into your bloodstream, which then triggers your immune system. And over time, this chronic immune activation can lead to autoimmune conditions like Hashimoto's, where your immune system starts attacking your thyroid tissue. So you can see how this all connects. Poor gut health leads to poor thyroid function, which then leads to higher cholesterol, more inflammation, and worsening autoimmune symptoms. And if this is making sense, please hit the like button so I know that you're with me. And because your gut also plays a major role in processing and eliminating estrogen, when it's not working well, estrogen can build up, leading to heavier periods, worse premenstrual symptoms, and more intense perimenopausal symptoms. That's why Emily's high cholesterol wasn't just a cholesterol problem. It was a signal that her gut, thyroid, and hormones were all out of sync. Now here's where it gets really interesting, because once we understood what was happening underneath the surface, we could take action and start to do something about it. As part of her personalized plan inside of the Autoimmune Harmony program, we started by focusing on healing the gut. We removed inflammatory foods that were triggering her immune system, like gluten and dairy and highly processed seed oils. And we brought in foods that calmed the inflammation, nourished the gut lining, and supported thyroid function, like bone broth and starchy fiber-rich vegetables, such as squash and sweet potatoes, and cruciferous vegetables like broccoli, kale, and cauliflower. We also worked on rebalancing her gut microbiome with some specific probiotics and digestive support. And we addressed that elevated beta-glucuronidase to help her body clear estrogen more efficiently. At the same time, we supported her thyroid with key nutrients like selenium and zinc and vitamin D that help with thyroid hormone conversion and also help to reduce autoimmune activity. And we also worked on lifestyle things like stress management and sleep, because chronic stress really suppresses your thyroid function and it can make your autoimmune flare-ups worse. Now, if Emily's story sounds familiar to you and you're wondering, where do I even get started with this? I've created a free resource for you called the Autoimmune Harmony Roadmap, and it will walk you through the exact framework that I use, the 3 steps that you need to start working on to address your autoimmune flare-ups and balance your hormone. I'll drop the link in the description below so that you can get started today. So within the first month of working with me inside the Autoimmune Harmony program, Emily started to notice some really positive changes. Her energy improved, not dramatically at first, but it was enough that she could get through her day without needing multiple cups of coffee, which I think is a big win. And she also noticed that her brain fog was starting to go away, so she felt more like herself at work. And yes, this did require a commitment. Healing at this level takes dedication, especially when you're juggling work and family and autoimmune symptoms. But with the right structure and the right guidance and support, it really becomes doable. And over time, it's actually empowering because you know exactly how to prevent and manage your flare-ups. All of these changes work together to really calm her immune system and rebuild her resilience from the inside out. Her digestion also improved. She was going to the bathroom regularly, which hadn't happened for years. And her bloating had mostly disappeared. And she was waking up feeling well rested. And she told me that she couldn't even remember the last time that happened. So after about 3 months into the Autoimmune Harmony program, we went ahead and ran her labs again so that we could get some data to match how good she was feeling. And it was fantastic. Her LDL cholesterol had dropped down into normal range. Her triglycerides, which had been in the high 200s, had come down significantly. And her thyroid antibodies had started to come down as well. At this point, she was also noticing that her joint pain had completely disappeared. And this was one of the main ways that her flare-ups would manifest. But what really stood out to her were the changes she was seeing in her menstrual cycles and her hormonal symptoms. Her periods became much milder, her cycles were predictable, and the mood swings and irritability that used to kind of take over the week before her period started had settled down. These were signs that her hormones were balancing out and that her immune system was calming down. And all of this made an even bigger difference because she was right in the middle of perimenopause, when shifting hormones can amplify everything like fatigue and mood changes and inflammation. But by taking the steps to heal her gut and her thyroid, her body had a stronger foundation to move through this season of life with more consistent energy, better cycles, and fewer flare-ups. She told me that she finally felt like her body was cooperating again. And now that she had consistent energy, she was able to show up fully for work and for her family and finally show up for herself. And she had neglected herself for many years. And she could do all of that without the constant feeling of exhaustion. Now, these are the kind of results that I see when we approach healing strategically by addressing the gut and all of the underlying triggers that lead to autoimmune flare-ups. And also by working to create daily rhythms that help the body feel safe enough to come back into balance. What we saw in Emily's labs and in how she felt really illustrates how interconnected everything is in our bodies. The gut, the liver, the thyroid, and our hormones do not work in isolation. They're part of one continuous communication loop. And when the gut is inflamed, it changes how your body processes estrogen, how liver detoxifies, and how well the thyroid can function. So when we focus on healing the gut, we're not just improving digestion, we're creating better communication between the hormones and the immune system. And that's the reason why her cycles became so much more manageable and her energy came back and her flare-ups quieted down. And that's exactly what happens when you address the deeper layers. Your gut, thyroid, and hormones begin to communicate again. It's not just about chasing perfect numbers or suppressing your symptoms, which we tend to really focus on these days, but it's about understanding the signals that your body has been sending you all along. So if you're like Emily and you suspect that your thyroid is off, but you've been told that your labs are normal or that it's just part of your age or getting older, please, please, please don't stop there. Keep digging. TSH is just one piece of the thyroid puzzle, like I said before, and it doesn't assess whether or not there's autoimmune activity going on that could be quietly driving your symptoms. And if you take one thing away from this story, I want you to understand that your hormones and your immune system aren't separate problems that need separate solutions. They're actually part of the same conversation. And when you understand that conversation, everything about your symptoms starts to make sense. And if you're not getting the answers that you deserve, don't stop searching. Advocate for yourself. Ask better questions. Dig deeper. And don't settle for Everything looks normal when you know something isn't right. You're the expert of your body, and your intuition matters. In the next video, I'm going to break down exactly how estrogen dominance can trigger autoimmune flare-ups and share some ways that you can address this and start feeling better. See you in the next one.